What would the average person think when they see a woman standing alone on the beach on a cold, snowy day? Whether it's considered cool or maybe that she's crazy. Taking one last sip of her alcoholic beverage, Sandra, gathering all her strength, shouted at the top of her voice, "You said you would love only me for the rest of your life! What love? What remaining life?" The girl did not stop shouting into the void, standing on the seashore. Although just a couple of days ago on this same spot, where the sea breeze was a little cold, the girl stood and a little did not understand what the guy was trying to tell her so insecurely. The girl remembered well every little detail of that day, the day when her lover proposed to her. And now she is in the same place, and her eyes are full of tears, but no longer from joy as then, but from the grief of parting. After this 6-year relationship ended so fruitlessly, the only thing that kept me going was the desire to go somewhere. The island where he proposed is really stupid. Such drunken thoughts of the girl did not give her peace. She also recalls the day when they both came to the cafe and the guy then said, "I'm so sick of it all." Sandra then, and really did not understand what could go wrong. She threw everything on the excitement before the engagement, saying, "At this time, everyone can be nervous if difficulties with the preparation do not rush." But the guy then only rudely interrupted her excuse by saying, "I don't love you anymore." These words shattered the girl from the inside out. At that moment, her body petrified. She could not move from her seat and say a word, just silently stared into the void, watching the guy next to her leaving. After calming down a bit, Sandra decided to pull herself together and then slowly make her way back home. "Since I arrived without a plan, I didn't even find a place to spend the night." The girl remembered the consequences of her impulsive decision. In fact, Sandra had drunk too much. Her eyes were already blurry, and she was swinging from side to side like a pendulum on a string. "First, we need to go to the village and find a place to live," Sandra pondered. Suddenly, the girl got tangled in her own legs and fell over the handrail right into the water. "Maybe it's because I'm drunk, but my body doesn't move like it should. I can't breathe." Drunken thoughts were replaced by anxiety and a desire to survive. To be abandoned by a man and die in such a remote place. "I can't die like this!" Continuing to struggle in the cold water, thought Sandra. But the amount of alcohol in her system was too much, and her body just wouldn't listen. All she could do was accept the situation and hope that someone would save her. Suddenly, Sandra felt someone's warmth nearby, and she was sharply able to breathe in fresh air, trying to cough up the water. From the shock she had received and the amount of alcohol in her system, she couldn't see the silhouette of the guy who had saved her. The guy, however, was extremely surprised when she abruptly passed out. Sandra woke up in a cold sweat. "Where am I? I remember falling into the water." Her thoughts were interrupted by a guy entering. "Come to your senses. If you're feeling better already, why not eat something?" the man asked. He also added, "I think you'd like someone to talk to." Sitting across from each other, Sandra decided to ask uncertainly, "I think you were the one who saved me that night. As soon as I pulled you out of the water, you passed out. That's why I brought you to my house, since there were no hospitals nearby," the boy said after telling a little about last night's adventure. "Jumping like that into the sea in the middle of winter, you know it's reckless." Recounting a little, he continued, "I didn't jump. I don't know what the situation was, but that doesn't solve anything," the girl answered a little uncertainly and timidly, remembering again all those moments of parting. Noticing that Sandra clearly had something wrong, the guy said, "I understand you. You don't want to talk about it. Everything is fine." And in his head, he repeated, "You need to stop worrying. It's none of my business. It's still early and there's no boat, so we'll stay here until dawn. You can use the room you were in earlier," the guy said emotionlessly. The girl lay in bed with her nose tucked into her phone, revisiting old photos. Suddenly, she got a message from her mother, and she remembered that she had told her that she was going on a trip before the wedding, thus hiding the truth of the breakup. With a heavy sigh, the girl put the phone away, covering her eyes with her hand. It was hard for her to fall asleep. In the next room, with no less heavy thoughts, I will not think about it. Tomorrow I'll think of something, said a guy sighing heavily. The next morning, the girl decided to apologize to the guy and thank him again for saving her. Go and take a shower, then we'll take a trip, and I'll help you find a suitable place, the guy told her. The girl was a little surprised. Is there any lodging around here? Housing? I don't think so, you see. It's a small village, the guy continued to explain to her, suddenly noticing her strange smirk. Save me, feed me, put me to bed. I wanted to help you find a place to sleep for the night, and now you're asking to stay with me. You're more shameless than I thought. The guy started to rebuke the girl. All the places the couple went to were either closed or crowded. This being a small village, there were no hotels here. If you have nowhere to stay, you go back the way you came. Right. And why would you want to stay in such a small place? Give up and go back. Still not understanding Sandra's logic, the guy asked. At work, there were already rumors of a breakup or divorce of the couple. And yes, it would be kind of embarrassing if she ran into her ex. That's why you can't have a relationship at work. Remembering all these circumstances, the girl shouted to the whole street, I will never let this happen! Back home, the girl began to tell about what was happening. I had a fiancé. We dated for 6 years, since college, and in the summer he proposed to me. We wanted to get married next spring. I was so looking forward to it, but he asked for a divorce. And why did you come to this remote island? The guy still didn't understand this girl's logic and intentions. I was so depressed about the breakup. Also, the rumors spread quickly. My nerves were on edge, Sandra replied. I don't know how the rumors spread, but everyone knew about the 2 people who broke up. They say bad things come in waves, and I was perfect for that. Immediately after the breakup, a lot of problems piled up on the girl. Unfortunately, I'm going to have to freeze your paycheck, her boss announced the news to her. Then the girl stood on the roof of the building in utter despair. I just wanted to run away somewhere where no one knows me. Should I take this opportunity to make a fresh start? Then not long after thinking that same day, the girl wrote her resignation letter and put it on the principal's desk. All I could think about was running away. During the story, the guy had also gone into his thoughts, but with her sharp shout, the girl interrupted him. So I'll ask again. I have nowhere to go, and I don't even want to go back. Please consider me a lost tourist and let me stay for a while, Sandra said pleadingly. It would be fine if I just rejected this request, thought the guy. But suddenly, a new message came on his phone saying that he had not paid his cell phone bill, and so he would be blocked in a few days. Come to think of it, I really need the money now. It's not the time to deal with a woman like that, the guy continued to reason. That's right. I'll pay the rent. The girl interrupted his thoughts. Even though the guy needed money, he wasn't corrupt. Are you planning to bribe me with something like that? After a while, the guy did give in. Okay, then you can stay. You'll stay in the same room you slept in yesterday. The girl was overjoyed. Because of the high prices, you have to constantly look for additional income. There is no other way out. The guy was in despair. Due to various circumstances, for some time the couple had to live together, knowing that the girl in turn demanded too much from the first person she met because she didn't want to go back home. She was afraid for her own life, so she was very happy when he said she could stay here for a while. He saved me, gave me food, and even a room. He's a good man, was Sandra's first thought. What are you going to do now? Are you kidding me? Didn't I tell you the towel needed washing? The boy burst into the room with a shout. And after washing it, immediately remove all hair from the bathroom. It's not for nothing that they say you can't give a dog human food. After saying that, the girl was as crushed and frightened as possible. That's the guy I moved in with. He turned out to be a very sensual and grumpy person. Joseph is the man who saved me from the sea that day, and the only person on this island who talked to me. He won't be easy to get along with. Once again, sitting at the table and eating lunch, the girl tried to find some topic of conversation with the guy. But it was all to no avail. She couldn't even start a normal conversation with him. It had been a few days since Sandra had stayed here, and the girl still didn't know much about the owner of the house. All that is known is the name and age. He is now 33 years old and started living here 7 years ago. And what is also known is that he is very fastidious. I don't know what he does, but he's almost always stuck at home, and he also has a cute puppy named Fluffy. Getting up from the table, the guy reminded the girl, "After you walk the dog, go to your neighbor's house and return the container to her." Leaving the house, the guy also shouted to the girl, "If anything happens, call me." And then he closed the gate. "Fluff, you're covered in snow. You're so white that I don't know where is snow and where is fur." Sandra shook the snow off the dog. Time seemed to flow slower here, as if it was somehow disconnected from reality. It was cold in the snowy forest, but it was so cozy. The sound of waves in the distance soothed the girl, unlike the noise of the city. "I've worn it for so long. I should probably throw it away." Suddenly noticing the ring on her finger, Sandra thought. Hovering in her thoughts, the girl did not notice how she came to some house. Looking at the map, she decided to make sure she had come to the right place. At the same moment, some old lady came out of the house. She immediately recognized Pushka, who greeted her happily. Introducing herself to the elderly woman, Sandra began to explain, "I recently came here, and Joseph let me stay at his place." The grandmother, briefly listening, said, "Oh, you're his girlfriend?" With this question, she clearly confused Sandra. "That must be the container I gave you last time. I just made lunch. I'll put it in now." Enthusiastically inviting Sandra to come inside, the neighbor told her, "It must not have been easy for you to get here, since your house is so far away. Here, have some hot coffee to warm you up," the neighbor said with the same enthusiasm. The woman was a little surprised to see the girl here. It seemed that young people had nothing interesting to do on this island as it appeared to her, to which Sandra replied, "I have always lived in the city, so to be in a place where there is so much open space is something new and just nice." But the woman's next question made Sandra almost choke on her tea. "So how did you manage to win his heart?" Such a sudden question made the girl feel sick to her stomach. "Well, I hadn't thought about it in that way. A strange misunderstanding." Pulling on an awkward smile, Sandra replied, "It didn't really work out that easily." But she was interrupted by her neighbor. "Joseph, he doesn't like dealing with other people. I feel like he's constantly putting up walls. I'm just surprised he let a stranger into his house. I was really worried at first, but now I'm glad," the older woman told her with a smile. Such a story about the guy's biography surprised the girl a bit. Why Joseph settled on the island? Come to think of it, he said he lived in the city, just like Sandra. But why now alone in an isolated place with no communication? "I wonder if I could tell you." Joseph suddenly turned to the girl, taking a bite of chocolate. Such an abrupt start of the dialogue from the guy's initiative surprised the girl very much. She obviously didn't expect such a sharp turn. Nevertheless, the guy continued his thought, telling the girl to follow him. Passing by the table, the girl noticed a painfully familiar book. Taking it in her hands, she said, "Ah, I know this one. It's John's debut novel, The Lovers. I remember reading it with 11th graders in middle school. You're a fan of this author, too?" Sandra asked Joseph admiringly. "I really like his novels, but he doesn't seem to be writing anything right now. Maybe he's depressed. That's why the reviews have gotten worse. I wonder why that is." And then the guy decided to interrupt the girl, saying that the author of this novel is him. "So Joseph is the writer John!" "No, I realize now that the names are similar, but the meaning of the naming was slightly different. Are you really the author of the novel?" There was no way Sandra could take away her amazement. "Yes, stop being surprised that I am a novelist writer with a bad reputation and an outdated style. Don't apologize. It makes me feel even more inferior." Still also emotionless, the guy replied to her while the girl found no place for herself. Since the guy had told the girl what he was doing, he also decided to check with her. "Now will you stop peeping in my room?" Lying on the bed, the girl read the reviews of the book. The more recent the work, the worse the reviews. The words are too harsh. It hurts to hear such things. In a way, it's even understandable why the guy stuck around like this. Noticing Joseph stepping out onto the balcony, the girl decided to join him, bringing cups of hot cocoa with her. The guy was expecting to drink coffee, though, so he was a little disappointed. His reaction made Sandra laugh knowingly, and she added, "I read somewhere that sweets help with creativity." The girl realized that the guy had no ideas at all right now. "Crisis. So that's what it is," Sandra said with a sigh. "I loved reading your books during my school days. You wrote so many good novels. How can you say you have no talent after that?" Emotionally, Sandra began proving the opposite to her boyfriend. There was a silent silence between the couple. Sandra already thought that she had overreacted. Suddenly, the girl decided to break the silence. "Do you mind if I take a look at the manuscript? I thought maybe I could give my opinion as a reader." Strangely enough, the boy agreed to the idea and told the girl to follow him. "I'm very excited about the opportunity to be the first to see the undiscovered works of the writer." Sandra excitedly opened the right file on the tablet. But the girl was very surprised to read the continuation of her favorite novel. "I sympathized with the main character because she seemed similar to me. But here's a more tragic development of events than I thought. A woman who has been abandoned by a husband who has lost his memory goes to Paris. This is the story of a man who vows revenge and returns with the help of a lover met there. I can compare us because she too went on a journey because of a broken heart. But unlike me, the heroine is very brave. I myself would never have thought of such revenge." Sandra continued to explain her surprise. Joseph was really surprised to hear that Sandra didn't want revenge. "I'm hurt. He's someone I loved. So I hope he's doing well." Sandra answered him with a smile. "Are those really my sincere feelings? Or is it all a lie? Yes, it's a grown-up way of saying goodbye." The girl reassured herself inside, and her gaze filled with sadness. "You're lying," John said confidently. "Do you know what expression you have on your face at the moment?" the boy remarked. "I know what it is, too. You just don't want to be a bad person, pretending to be mature and decent. I don't want to be seen as petty, so this has rubbed off on me," the man admitted. Moving closer to the girl, John asked her opinion of the manuscript. "So what do you think? You tell me if there's anything strange," he asked. "I'd like to see more emotion from the female character, like the loneliness she feels before she leaves. I think if she's too unemotional now, is it possible for her to be like that? I don't think anyone can be like that at all." The girl began to describe her wishes. "Although I remember myself that day, I literally have a hole in my chest. I remember that I felt unbearable, cold, and emptiness. I don't want anyone to catch me, but I also hoped that there would be someone who would help me." The lonely girl thought, "I get the impression that you intentionally left such feelings out of the story, but it's weird when a character tells the reader that she's pretending to be strong. I think it would be more exciting if the emotions were included," the girl kept saying. And John just listened to her edits in silence. "That's okay. I'll take your comment to heart. But it's late. You go back and get some rest," the guy said as he stood up. Although this pastime seemed quite fun for Sandra, but still the general tone of the work was a little gloomy, and for a man who used to write such innocent romance novels, it seemed unusual. But why did he change things so drastically? Well, or was John originally such a person? Seriously wondered the protagonist. Like a cold winter night, a man whose inner self was hard to peek into, and yet somehow these thoughts did not give Sandra peace of mind. For some reason, she kept worrying about it. Joseph woke up the next morning to the ringing of his cell phone. It was unknown who could have called him so early in the morning. It was his editor praising him for the edits he had made on the main character's emotional line. "It's been a long time since you've written this well," praised the supervisor. "Please keep it up," said the editor-in-chief, and ended the call, leaving Jacob in a pleasant shock. As he left the room, the guy noticed that Sandra was already awake as well and was making herself some morning coffee. Gaining a little confidence, John decided to thank the girl for the edits she had said yesterday. "So, would you mind continuing to help me with advice?" the guy asked her timidly. Although the guy didn't expect her to agree at all, but what was his surprise when she accepted his offer so easily? "If there's anything I can do to help, I'll do my best," the girl pointed out. At that moment, Sandra somehow felt as if she was getting closer to the guy, but it was only an illusion. "Right now, get out of this house." Turning to face the girl, with anger in his timbre, John said. There was some kind of TV program on the television, talking about the last day of the passing year. "The end of the year with loved ones always brings a sense of excitement," the anchorwoman was saying. "Time flies so fast." It had only been a few weeks since Sandra had arrived here, and already it was time to count down the days of the passing year. "Speaking of which, Sandra, aren't you going home? After all, it's New Year's Eve." The guy decided to clarify after all. At that moment, a gloomy chill swept over the girl. She remembered that she still had not told her parents that she was divorced. Despair covered the girl from head to toe. She couldn't even say a word on the subject in front of her parents. Afterward, Sandra decided to ask Joseph if he was going to go home, to which he replied that he hadn't been home since he moved here. It's just that when the connection is lost, it's hard to restore it, and the gap becomes too huge. The girl was very surprised at this answer. "You said you've been here for 7 years. Sandra remembered. It turns out that all this time he had not kept in touch with his loved ones. Suddenly, the guy held out some kind of flyer to Sandra. "Take your pick. I couldn't cook, so we'll order by delivery," he suggested. The girl was actually more surprised that such a small town had delivery. "Sure, it's inhabited." Immediately, the guy answered her. Seeing the fried chicken on the cover of the catalog, the girl couldn't contain her delight. And from her reaction, the guy immediately knew they should order it. "You don't usually order this kind of thing." Sandra decided to inquire then. "Well, I don't mind eating sometimes, but I like rice better," John answered her in a calm tone. "Yes, it's been a long time since I've eaten this well. It's really good," Sandra said with a satisfied face as she leaned a little further away from the table. And all her joy, the guy managed to punctuate it with one phrase. "It'll all be over soon if you clean up quickly." Suddenly, some elderly man came to visit. It turned out he was looking for Joseph. Joseph decided to talk to the man. "Sandra, I'm going to go to my house on the hill. Clean up and I'll be back soon," warned the boy. As she finished cleaning up the first floor, the girl remembered that there was one more room left. "I need to clean up here as well." With a satisfied smile, she walked down the hallway. John used to forbid her from coming in here at all, but when she agreed to help him with grading his papers, she began to frequent his room. While dusting the shelves, the girl noticed some kind of box on top and decided to reach for it. "It would be rude to open it, so I'll quickly clean it up and put it back," the girl decided as she wiped the dust off the box. And then at that moment, John himself walked into the room. He came in so quietly that he startled the girl, and so, losing her balance, she fell right on top of him, knocking them both down. After recovering a little, the girl apologized. "Excuse me, are you hurt?" But the guy only ran up to the fallen box, looking at the contents in horror. There lay a photograph of the happy couple and a wristwatch, the dial of which had been broken due to the fall. Seeing the condition of the dial, the guy became furious. He could no longer contain his emotions. "When did I ever ask you to clean my room?" yelled the guy at the girl. "And you were allowed to stay here because of the circumstances. But that doesn't mean you can behave like this," stuttered the guy on emotion. "Why on earth would you touch someone else's stuff? I don't want your money. Get out of this house." At that moment, the guy continued to yell at Sandra. After gathering her things, the girl looked around and said that it was time for her to leave. The girl also admitted that she enjoyed her time with the man. However, she heard silence in response. She had never seen Joseph so angry, and the watch she had broken must have been very valuable to him. Still, the girl was utterly desperate. Standing at the check-in counter at the airport, another unpleasant situation was waiting for the girl. Since New Year's Eve was coming soon, there were no tickets for the moment. Everyone was leaving to see their children or parents. While the girl was thinking about where she would spend the night, the wheel on her suitcase broke. It was simply a terrible day for her. In the utter despair of not understanding what she should do next, She only sat on the chair, covering her face with her hands. After all, even if she made it to land, she had nowhere to go back to. After all, the girl quit her job, broke up with her fiancé, and did not even tell her parents the whole truth. She has nowhere to go with a broken soul. Everything in her life was a mess. At that moment, someone approached the girl. Without raising her head, the girl recognized who it was from her voice. It was the elderly neighbor to whom she was taking the container. Seeing the young girl's desperate look, the woman invited her over. "You lie down and rest, you're freezing," said the kind woman. In fact, Sandra was very uncomfortable, so the girl admitted it. To which the woman told her that she simply could not leave her alone in the cold, especially on New Year's Eve. Falling asleep, the girl remembered those warm days when, standing on the seashore with her mother, they laughed joyfully and carefree. In the eyes of her parents, she was still a child. Then her mother's gaze was the warmest and most dear to her, and what warmed her more was her mother's faith in her success. Suddenly, the girl woke up to the horror of hearing a strange knocking sound. To her surprise, it was Joseph. He had come to her, but she really didn't understand what to expect. That's exactly what the guy decided to explain to the girl. "I found out that you went looking for the port and then came in here. I was so angry and rude. I know your whole situation, so I blamed myself for kicking you out right before New Year's Eve. I should apologize. I'm sorry." Immediately, he apologized. At that moment, a storm of emotions came over the girl. "I'm the one who should apologize. There was something valuable there. I wanted to help, but I'm sorry," she said, and tears of bitterness appeared on the girl's face. Hearing her quiet sobbing, the guy asked permission to enter the room. The guy's behavior was so soft towards Sandra that it made her surprised and puzzled at the same time. "You can go back if you want. You've lived there for so long," said the man. "What if I do something stupid again?" Still also in despair, saw Sandra off talking. The guy couldn't stand it and shouted, "I won't kick out like that from now on. I promise. I have a conscience too, and I feel guilty." He honestly confessed. Seeing how the guy blames himself, the girl briefly thought and agreed to come back. At that moment, an elderly woman walked into the room. "Oh, you two have made up. I'm so happy for you. Oh, I'm not interrupting." And without waiting for an explanation, hurried to leave the young couple. Walking through the dark, snow-covered woods, the lad noticed the rewound wheels on the suitcase. "So, what? Is it because you couldn't get on dry land?" Joseph decided to ask. "There aren't many ships here. Sorry I didn't think of that sooner." Decided to apologize again after all, the guy apologized. A little while later, Sandra decided to break the awkward silence. "And who gave you this watch?" asked the girl. To which John Hay dryly replied that it was the teacher. Although the guy said it was back in school and it was a gift for winning a competition, but Sandra thought it was a very important gift, and apparently he and the teacher were close. "And no, just a passing connection. I should have thrown them out a long time ago." John's sharp, unemotional reply to her. It was all kind of weird. Although the guy said it wasn't all that important, but it seemed to Sandra as if he was trying to deceive himself. After all, when something important comes up in life, it becomes more difficult, and so John seemed to shy away and pretend that he didn't need it. In this respect, John and Sandra were similar. They were both escaping from reality and trying to run away from their problems. Suddenly, the girl stopped and said abruptly, "Joseph, can I ask you a favor?" This made the guy surprised. The next morning, the guy brought the girl to the place where the sunrise was best seen. While the girl was mesmerized by the view before her, the guy couldn't take his eyes off her. "I was a little excited too when you said about the request, but it turns out you offered to go together to watch the sunrise," said John. "But seeing the sunrise in the new year is especially delightful. The boy's family used to go on such outings. Those were great times." And the guy also shared that their family had a tradition of making New Year's promises. "Have you prepared any promises for this year?" inquired the guy to the girl. "Well, last year I was just running away. Broken relationships, a lot of pain, reality, and even a wounded heart. I just turned my back on everything because of a desire to avoid conflict, but problems don't solve themselves. Sandra thought aloud. So this year, the girl made a firm decision for herself not to run away. And I want to stop running away from problems. That was exactly what the girl's promise was. That's cool. I just thought it would be a cool plot for a book. Maybe I should make a change too, pondered the boy. If that's what you want, then certainly anything is possible. Sandra answered him then, looking straight into his eyes. After all, she was here to help the guy. Though such self-confidence made John very wary. Well, it was time to leave. The guy was planning to go back to bed, since he hadn't gotten any sleep at all, but suddenly Sandra called out to him, "I remembered I have to call someone, so I'll come back later," said the girl, seeing the guy off with a glance. Dialing the number, the girl heard a native voice. "Mom, it's me. Happy New Year." "Greeting," she said. "Mom, you know I broke my engagement with that man. I'm sorry I didn't tell you sooner." Sandra decided to come clean. But what was her surprise when her mother wasn't surprised at all? "Yes, I guessed that already. You must have made up your mind a long time ago," realized the woman. "And maybe you really will break up, but don't worry too much. Meetings and breakups, that's the way human relationships are." Her mother then continued to tell her, "Breaking off an engagement is better than divorce, isn't it?" On such a beautiful note that day, their dialogue ended. When the girl told her mom about her marriage, she was so happy and honestly feared that her mom would be very upset. Maybe what I was avoiding so much was not my mom's reaction, but my troubled heart. Maybe I was running away from reality, wallowing in anxiety for no reason, Sandra thought. When the girl came face to face with this, it turned out that it wasn't all that scary. Continuing her dialogue with her mother, Sandra also mentioned that she had quit her job. But such a reaction from the mother Sandra obviously did not expect. That woman abruptly started yelling into the phone. "Why did you quit? Because of him you didn't want to work in the same company with him?" Angry mother. After which the girl immediately began to justify herself. "No, although, of course, I was uncomfortable meeting with him. It's just that the situation got bad there. That's why I decided to find something better," explained the protagonist of this story. Sandra still managed to calm her mother a little, saying that during the trip she will rest. She will gain strength and find a new job. Saying all this, Sandra remembered the day when she and her mother had stood on the beach like that, making a New Year's promise. But if it gets completely unbearable, you can step aside and rest. Sometimes a break helps you get up again and go on. That was also my mom's advice that day. And only now, after some time, to the girl reached the whole essence of the said phrase. "Hurry up, I'm very busy," said a strange man not far from Sandra, and behind him stood a certain woman. Giving a nod, he decided he should have cut his head off first. To be honest, Sandra wasn't going to face that. And with a look of horror on her face, she raised the knife above her head, swinging it straight at the target. On the main street of the village, the Wind Festival was being held, and now it was not just a festival, but there were various entertainment for the young people there. So tourists were not uncommon there, just like a real festival. Then all the villagers unite to prepare for it. "And it would be great if you miss would come to help out a bit," said the older man to Sandra as the girl walked by. To be honest, John wasn't very happy about it because for several years he had tried to avoid all this. The guy had never once attended this festival because if one missed an event in this village, everyone would know about it and it wouldn't be good. "Oh, Mr. Joseph, this year, it seems you won't be able to go this year." Whereupon that grandfather decided to slink away when he saw the guy. "All right then, let's get started then. Come over here and help. The sooner you finish here, the sooner we can start cooking," said the grandfather. You could see from the boy's face that he was not happy about all this. While John stayed outside to help, Sandra went into the kitchen with the older man. This was her front line of work, but seeing the bowls full of fish, all the girl's enthusiasm immediately vanished. She wasn't ready for something like this. Sandra never thought she would have to do such a thing. Finally, the fish was finished. But the girl was exhausted and could barely walk down the street. The Festival of the Winds is held every 3 years by the people of the coastal village to worship the sea deity and ask for safety at sea and to some extent in the village. Although it's called a religious ritual, it's accompanied by dancing and chanting just like a festival. And apparently that's why the quiet island village has started to come alive. Although young people may regard it as a superstition, but for the coastal inhabitants, going into the sea is a big risk. That's why the festival is very important to them. The husband and eldest son of the local headman were in a sea disaster. It was decades ago, but that's why he is very cautious about the festival. When she got home, Sandra thought about what she wanted to know more about these people. All day, she was like a frog in a well. The girl was always afraid to turn off the familiar road. She only knew that she had to finish university and find a good job. That's why she ran away here. Here people live a real life, fighting for their existence. And when Sandra thought about it, she felt a little ashamed because she realized that the world was not limited to her. It seemed so obvious, but it felt as if Sandra had forgotten about it. Walking further down the main road, Sandra noticed 2 slightly suspicious men. They were discussing some guy. I hope that young guy is all right. Out of the blue, he felt bad and left. This man, who very rarely showed up, came to help. It's very strange. That's why the city people don't even come close. The people were talking over each other. Sandra immediately realized that they were talking about Joseph. Interrupting the men's dialogue, she asked where he had gone. The guy was really getting uncomfortable with all these outside eyes looking at him. His head was spinning, and he was starting to feel nauseous. So uncomfortable was this environment for him. But Sandra quickly found the guy struggling to make it home. The guy was pale, and his eyes spoke for themselves. When she got home, the girl put the guy to bed and told him to rest and went to work herself. Grandpa even started to worry a little about the guy. Is everything all right with him? It seems like he's closed in on himself like this before. What was it called? Society phobia? Anyway, it's all weird. The man thought aloud. At this time, the guy was dreaming of his old memories from his school days, when his classmates bullied him by pouring stale milk on his head. Back then, the whole school thought he was trash that somehow needed to be thrown away. That day, even the teacher could not revive the bullies and closed his face to all the bullying that was going on over the guy. The teacher really did blatantly ignore everything he saw and only silently continued to teach his lesson. It's like a feeling of constant ignoring, as if the guy didn't exist at all, as if he was an unnecessary toy in a world where everyone communicates with each other. He was left behind like garbage. As if nothing happened, and his resentment towards the world around him was getting stronger. It was at that point that the guy started to develop a fear of society and people. With everyone looking at him, it became difficult for him to breathe. It was like he was suffocating. From such a dream, the guy woke up in a cold sweat, and only the realization that it was just a dream gave him some peace of mind. Finding himself constantly surrounded by villagers, John began to feel that his condition was deteriorating, and eventually, he just ran away. But then he remembered how he'd met Sandra, and at first he thought that by spending time with her, he was getting used to socializing with people, and maybe things would be different now. But things were apparently not so simple in his life. John decided to leave the room to drink some water and come to his senses. When he opened the door, he saw Sandra on the doorstep, who had brought him something to eat. In fact, the guy was really surprised to see her, because he thought that the girl had gone to visit her grandmother again. To which the girl, with a smile on her face, said, "If someone close to me is sick, I can't stay away." He really was pleasantly surprised to hear such care from Sandra. It was nice for him to hear such a thing from a girl he already knew. But also the guy was a little uncomfortable about showing the girl such a side of himself, so he decided to apologize to her immediately. "I know I probably seemed really weird," the man remarked. "It's hard to start a normal life when you were abused as a child. Because of anxiety and fear in crowded places, panic attacks can set in. Negative experiences from the past can have an impact for years." He narrated, Sandra interrupted the boy sharply. There's nothing ugly about it. It doesn't matter how much time has passed. It's up to each person to determine how long it takes them to deal with the traumas of the past. For someone, even a small thing can be a big wound. People just have that kind of heart. The girl tried to reason with him. Everyone goes through it differently depending on the complexity of the wound, and consider doing exactly the same as others. That's being too hard on yourself. That's when those words from the girl really hit the guy. It was then that he remembered the conversation with his father that had reprimanded him. How long are you going to live like that? You think you're the only one in this world who experiences something like this? Others may seem happy and successful, but they have their own problems too. You can't compare yourself to others, my father said. People close to us often have certain perceptions grounded in the past or their expectations, but new acquaintances see us for who we are. Now, without prejudice, this is a very common internal contradiction where we constantly convince ourselves that we don't like people, yet deep down inside, we can feel warmth from ordinary socializing. Sandra used to think that John was just sensitive and harsh, but now she knows the circumstances. Now, when she looks from the other side, she begins to understand him a little bit, because having been wounded by people, it can still be difficult for him to communicate with them. That said, he will never turn his back on those who are in trouble and will always help. She realized that this man is full of compassion. After a while, the long-awaited harvest festival started in the village. Upon arriving there, Sandra was really taken aback by how many people were there. So she tried to keep her eyes on the guy, occasionally inquiring about his well-being. The guy in turn tried to stay as far away from the crowd and people's gazes as possible, so Sandra suggested that he go home. Good, because I rarely meet such a huge number of people, but it is also possible to observe from afar. John then calmly answered her, but still, the girl decided to change the guy's mind a little, suggesting to come a little closer to at least see something. It was not often to see such things in the village, and it was a pity to see them from afar. Without waiting for an answer, the girl grabbed the boy's sleeve and pulled him forward. In all this crowd, they met the same grandfather who had helped them in their preparations for the Wind Festival. In fact, everyone around them was surprised to see Joseph, but the longer they were in the crowd, the more questions and discussions surrounded them. And so, immediately, the girl decided to get the guy as far away from there as possible. The guy was very tired and disappointed in himself. Sandra, on the other hand, tried to support him as best she could. And how did you like it? Did you like any of it? The girl inquired. Then the guy admitted that he thought that the event would be modest, but it turned out that there were a lot of people gathered here. The celebration is one of the most important events in the village, and it is quite rare. Many photographers looking to capture the unique scenery and tourists wanting to visit the island often come here. Fedor sounds wonderful. Let's go together to watch the dance performances in the town square without wasting a minute. Sandra decided to suggest. But seeing the guy's reaction, the girl decided to go there on her own after all. Moving towards the main square, Sandra noticed how many people were here taking pictures. And if you think about it, Joseph used to be into photography, so that's how he found out about this island, although it had nothing to do with her. Immersed in her thoughts, the girl suddenly heard a familiar voice somewhere in the crowd. She couldn't believe her ears, much less her eyes, when she saw her ex-boyfriend with a new girl. Hoping that no one had noticed her, the girl immediately hid around the corner. At this point, it became very hard for her to breathe. She was very nervous and worried. That girl who was with him together, she was a new employee when Sandra was still working there. Although not much time had passed since their breakup, they were still together. But Sandra has firmly decided for herself that she doesn't want to suffer anymore because of a guy like that. She wants to just laugh and forget all this. But why then the young girl's heart still clenches? It remained in the shadows of fame. After this meeting, the girl forgot about the dance she wanted to watch, so she simply walked back to the cafe where John was waiting for her. From her face, he immediately realized that something was wrong. My ex-boyfriend is here. Then, sitting down at the table, Sandra said, and at that moment, John suggested to Sandra to realize the plot of his novel. That is, to get revenge on her ex-boyfriend. "He's moved on. He has a new girlfriend, and shouldn't you be happy with your new man?" said the guy, and at that moment, Joseph proposed. But Sandra didn't like the idea a little bit. "I don't think it's necessary," replied the girl. It all seemed kind of childish to Sandra. What's wrong with that? Well, if I were you, I couldn't ignore an opportunity like this. I know it's not exactly mature, but wouldn't it be better to take action instead of regretting it later? Still standing by his suggestion, the boy stood his ground. Act like an adequate adult, holding back his anger but possibly regretting. Or act like a child. Which of those things did Sandra really want? Not restraining herself, the girl nevertheless agreed to the proposal. A satisfied smile of victory played on Joseph's face. Walking down the main street, the girl's face was jubilant, as was everything inside, for she had really decided to do it. Still, there are a lot of people here, and it's unknown if we'll meet them again. As if trying to talk Joseph out of the idea, Sandra said, "We will meet them. There's only one ferry for everyone. Even if it's nighttime, where will we go on a small island? You can show me that guy's picture again. I don't remember it well." Joseph was indeed serious. While the girl was looking for the ex's picture, someone suddenly called out to her from the crowd. It was a case of remember the ray. Here comes the sun. They clearly did not expect her to meet him so soon. At such a surprise, the girl grabbed John's arm, pulling him closer to her, trying to play off the nonchalance, though inside everything was clenching. And it was strange to see him alone. "Where is that girl? And the ex just wouldn't stop talking. Are you really stalking me because you still can't forget?" This phrase made John very angry, but the girl managed to get ahead of him and replied, "Of course not. I came to meet a guy." All the while, Joseph was surprised at how calm Sandra was on the outside, even though a couple minutes ago she seemed so awkward and now she was trying so hard. Pulling the girl closer to him by the waist, John said, "Yeah, I suggested she go to my hometown. She wasn't stalking you. I'm the one who's Sandra's boyfriend. What are you, a coworker?" In fact, the girl was a little alarmed by this closeness between them, to which the guy only pointed out her ex's reaction. The former young man was very angry that Sandra was able to find a boyfriend in such a short time that they had broken up, and at this point he seemed very unhappy with Sandra. Joseph then took Sandra's hand as he noticed that she was starting to get a little nervous. John asked her if she was okay. After that, they continued to play the happy couple in love. At that moment, his new girlfriend ran up to the ex. It turns out she was just late at the store. Looking around, the girl spotted Sandra. "Looks like she has some dignity after all," thought Sandra as she said hello to her. "The rumors of our breakup have already spread, so she must realize that there is nothing between me and this guy." Sandra thought then, looking at how awkward the couple in front of her were. They had almost started dating right away. Maybe it was his relationship that was the main reason for me leaving, but it doesn't matter now. With these thoughts, the girl and Joseph left the traitor couple. The ex-boyfriend's rage was boiling over more and more. She loves her hometown, but she came to the place her ex-boyfriend showed her without a fraction of a doubt. Hearing this, John only turned around and winked at the girl standing next to him. This made the blonde blush, which further added gasoline to the burning fire of Sandra's ex-fiancé's rage. A little later, closer to evening, while the girls stood admiring the night view of the city, Joseph brought her a lantern. The boy wondered what the girl had been staring at so intently all this time. "Apparently, this is the last ferry for tonight to leave the island," noted the guy. At this point, the girl did look very calm indeed, though perhaps she wasn't. But she was still playing the part perfectly. Sandra also decided to thank the guy for his help, even though it looked silly. "I want to meet a really great person, but it's going to take some waiting. And this breakup will also become something ordinary afterwards. People like that make my inner emotional self start to seem ridiculous. I think that's what will happen eventually." "Right." As if trying to cheer her up, Joseph continued to speak. After these words, There was a mute silence between the couple, and the two of them continued to gaze at the nighttime beauty of the village. Even though I tried a trick to calm myself down, right now, I'm still hurt, suffering, and so angry at him. By continuing to move forward, not letting the painful memories stop me, I might become an even stronger person than ever before, thought the protagonist. I hope I can forget him and love someone again like I did the first time, but those memories will leave scars, and I don't think I'll ever be able to trust as naively as I did before. As much as Sandra would like to admit it, it seems that her heart will be scarred forever. To which Joseph told her, "And after you get over all the sadness, the next breakup will be much easier. Even the hardest and most intolerant love eventually ends, and even the one you couldn't forget slips from your mind in an instant." The man explained. "But that doesn't mean we become indifferent to the relationship, does it?" Sandra asked him. "Isn't that how we mature with a fleeting smile?" Joseph answered her. But Sandra was still a little unsure if that was definitely considered adult behavior, to which the guy answered her that a lot of people put up boundaries so they don't get hurt, try to keep their distance. But by trying to keep your distance, does falling in love work? Can it be considered true love? Sandra asked him restlessly. Eternal childhood love is not the only love. Even though we are aware that separation is imminent, we still want to be with that person. Joseph told her then, looking at the yellow lantern flying away from them. "Don't worry, I'm sure, that you can handle love, whatever it is. Even what you're experiencing right now shows that you've been in a real relationship," the guy pointed out. The girl did feel better after those words. At some point, tears appeared in her eyes, and it was as if Joseph wanted to touch her and comfort her. But then suddenly, the girl startled him by shrieking sharply, "Good! Now I feel better!" This dialogue was filled with sincerity and a desire to help each other. "When I first met you, I thought we were alike and sympathy appeared. But now I realize you and I are different people," said the young man. "And yes, you can handle it. You are much stronger and braver than me," thought Joseph, looking at the lantern flying away in the distance. The next morning, Sandra brought the boy his tablet, alerting him that she had read the last chapter, and her comments were highlighted in blue. Noticing the girl still standing in the room, the guy asked if there was anything else she wanted to discuss, to which Sandra only quickly left the room. Slowly, the girl was starting to sort out her thoughts, and real things were starting to bother her more and more. Although if she could find a decent job and earn some money, it would be cool. But when she sees Joseph concentrating on his novel, then Sandra wondered if she would have the same passion for any dream job. And at that moment, Joseph walked in and suggested that the girl start writing, which surprised her a little, because Sandra had never started or even tried such a thing. "Anyone can do it. You probably have experience writing. After all, it doesn't have to be a great novel." John then continued to narrate. At this point, Sandra began to remember that she used to keep diary entries, even though it had been a long time since those days. It was actually not a bad start. Joseph recommended that Sandra just try to write some sort of essay. It was just usually at times like this that thoughts started to become clearer and one could understand one's emotions better. The guy tried in every possible way to support the girl. He also showed her a platform where people could write their thoughts in peace. But most of all, Sandra was worried about only one question. Who will even be interested in reading my story? The protagonist didn't know, to which Joseph, looking straight into her eyes, suddenly said, "I'd like to hear it." This threw the girl a little into a blush, but afterward, the guy continued the story of a journey that began with a drink and ended with the rescue of a beautiful guy. And wouldn't anyone be interested in such a headline? Out of all this story, the girl was most affected by the words, "handsome guy." It made the girl blush, and her voice became very timid and insecure. She couldn't even say a word while looking at the guy, so she decided to leave the room. After all, something had changed since that festival. Sandra couldn't stop thinking about the guy since he had helped her then. Suddenly, the girl came back and timidly asked, "If I start writing, will you read it?" Really confessed the girl's doubts. The guy hesitated a bit, but still answered positively to the girl's question. This gave Sandra more confidence in taking the guy's laptop. She started to start her manuscript. During this time, a lot had happened to her. The breakup, the dismissal, the life on the island with the stranger that saved her. These were all things she could not think of in the past. In the beginning, she was very scared, but she was able to meet a lot of new people, as well as learn about the world she didn't even know about before. While the girl was writing her story, John received some letter. Opening it, he immediately crumpled it and threw it away. The contents clearly made the guy angry. Also, the guy noticed that the light was still on in the girl's room. Going in, he saw a satisfied Sandra. The girl was surprised at herself because it was the first time in a long time when she was so interested in something. Because earlier at work, she was thinking how to get home faster. John sat down next to her and asked her if she had managed to write something. Actually, reading her story, the guy was pleasantly surprised. The only thing he added was, "It would be nice to add a picture to make it more like a travelogue." Trying to find the right picture, the guy moved closer and closer to the girl, and at one point their faces were too close, which made the girl blush, so she immediately started citing fatigue and said it was time for the guy to leave. She couldn't believe that he was so close. Leaving the room, the guy's face also involuntarily flushed red. On Joseph's advice, Sandra began posting moments from her life on the island online. Although these stories seemed to be of no interest to her, they gradually aroused the interest of other people. But unlike her, things were not so colorful for the guy. He was at a complete standstill. The guy didn't care about what was going on around him, so there was no point in asking him anything in such a state. All he cared about at the moment was the end of the affair. He was very worried and wanted to make it perfect. Walking through the expensive stores, the girl reasoned that maybe when the guy finished working on his novel, it would be worth having a mini party. After all, he hadn't eaten much lately, but there was no telling if he would be surprised if Sandra gave him such a surprise. These beautiful thoughts were interrupted by a passerby who wanted to ask her for directions. The guy was interested in where Joseph's house was. This surprised the girl a little and took her by surprise. She was a little confused, but still showed her the way. In fact, the guy seemed very much like Joseph himself. Was this really his relative? But the guy didn't mention that there would be guests tonight. Sandra wondered seriously. Thinking it was the girl back from the store, the guy ran up to open the door. That's when he saw his brother on the doorstep. The guy was clearly not happy to see such a guest on the territory of his house. After all, his brother had tried so hard to get rid of him before, and now suddenly he was back. Joseph clearly condemned his brother after all. The latter despised people, almost mixing them with dirt earlier. "It's been almost 10 years. Even Father has already forgiven you. Stop it." Jacob tried to calmly explain to him. "You're the one who should be apologizing to me. What have I done to you that you've decided to forgive me?" This was getting to the point where John couldn't contain his emotions. "Joseph, your father is not well right now. Stop being stubborn and come back." Jacob was still trying to change his mind. "I see no reason to be proud after what you've done." That was the last straw for John. Grabbing his sweater, John walked out of the house, saying one last thing. "Get out of my house now!" Just at that moment, Sandra came running up to the house. The guy was really surprised to see her. The guy was worried that the girl might have heard too much. Suddenly, panic seized him. Unable to stand it, he pushed Sandra away and ran away from the house. Trying to catch up with his brother, Jacob runs into the girl and asks, "You and Joseph? What is your relationship with my brother?" Jacob already thought Sandra was his girlfriend, to which the girl only awkwardly began to deny. "If you're on good terms with him, please talk him into coming home." "He won't listen to me at all," Jacob said with some relief. "That's Joseph's choice, so I don't think I can help you in any way. I'll go!" This was clearly not the answer Joseph's brother had expected to hear. It was already starting to get dark outside, and Sandra was still looking for the guy in the woods. She was actually curious to know what had happened in his past that made him like this. That said, she wasn't sure if she could still ask such a thing. But the guy at that moment was only interested in one thing: how much Sandra heard. In fact, the guy was afraid that after learning about his past, she would also turn away from him. But somehow the guy's heart was full of expectation that this girl was not like that. And with this thought, he just silently let her sit next to him on the beach. The guy was surprised that the girl did not immediately ask about what was going on, so he decided to tell her himself, because maybe then he would feel better. This story goes back to his high school days. He met her in high school in the spring. She was his teacher. She knew his love for manuscripts and supported him in every possible way. Such support was very valuable for the guy. At that moment, even his parents forbade him to write, saying that a high school student should care about his studies and not other unnecessary activities. The teacher reminded him every time that he had talent, and she always believed in his success. That day, the teacher offered to give the boy a ride home, but on the way home, she offered to take him out to eat at a restaurant. After all, she was the one who supported him. This person who guided and was a point of support for him became more than just a teacher. It was after he started feeling this way that he had an argument with his father, who threw away all of his son's manuscripts. Then the boy was desperate. He sat on the school grounds in the pouring rain until a teacher suddenly found him. She invited him into her home. "Come on in! Let's get out of the rain first! You'll catch a cold!" And while she was wiping his head with a towel, the boy couldn't hold back his tears. And the girl couldn't hold back her feelings and kissed the guy. Yes, it was first love. It seemed to Joseph that next to her, all problems go away, and only next to her he can defeat any adversity and obstacles. He sincerely believed it. Then, for winning the contest, she gave him the same hand watch that Sandra had broken. The watch actually looked a bit expensive, and the boy didn't immediately want to accept it. But then the teacher assured him that all cool guys should always have at least one pair of watches, putting the gift on his hand. The next day, all the slanted glances in the school hallway were directed at Joseph, and on the bulletin board hung a poster with the news of the affair with the teacher, and pinned a picture of the teacher and Joseph kissing. Then everyone whispered and looked askew at the boy. At that moment, the principal's voice came over the loudspeaker and told the boy to come to his office immediately. Upon entering, he immediately saw his father and the teacher that stood behind him as if hiding in the shadows. The father immediately saw his son and slapped him. "And this is how you decided to repay me for everything I did for you. How dare you force a teacher to do such a thing, and then still consider yourself a human being?" The father did not stop venting his anger on his son. And the boy stood there and did not understand what they were talking about. He had never done anything like that. He knew that the relationship with the teacher could be a problem, but the guy never forced her to do something like that. Here the principal was already getting into the dialogue. Do you think she willingly agreed to something like that? Here there was clearly some misunderstanding. After all, she cannot set him up like that. And at this point, the teacher said that he has a wedding soon, and everyone knows about it too. Then the guy was broken completely. What was it all about then? Was he really just a toy for her? What happened next, Joseph does not remember. He did not even think about what the others would think of him. They then desperately continued to scream about how she could do such a mean thing to him. At that moment, everything came upon the guy. The condemnation and cold treatment from his family, the bullying at school. But what tormented him the most was that someone he trusted had done such a mean thing to him. He thought at the time that maybe it would have been better if she had told the whole truth then, asked him to lie. Then he would have just acquiesced. But this way, she didn't show the slightest bit of courtesy to the guy's feelings and just cowardly ran away. Even though the guy had tons of evidence to back up their relationship, he didn't want to overshadow the special time they had together. Even though she'd cowardly dumped John, he'd remained loyal to his teacher to the end, showing how different they were. It was the last bit of pride he could keep. That same night, the boy informed his father that he was dropping out of school. He made a decision for himself to pass all the exams and enter the university on his own. But still, sometimes the guy thinks that maybe he would have felt better if he had taken revenge on her then. What choice was more correct in that situation? No one knows and will never know. When Joseph entered the university, he thought that he could forget the past and start from scratch. But then at one of the meetings of students from one of the groups, he saw a classmate from high school. Although they did not communicate in high school, but still John was able to remember him. Then everyone noticed that the guys knew each other. But what made the guy even more wary was the classmate's memories of the past. Then, fearing that history might repeat itself and that Guy might spread rumors about the past, they brought the guy out, and he asked the guy to come out with him for a few minutes. He then calmly asked the guy not to spread false rumors around the university because he wanted to keep it a secret, to which the guy kindly agreed. However, at that time, Joseph had no idea that someone's weaknesses could be a great appetizer for someone else. And not a couple of days passed, as all the false rumors about this school romance crawled the walls of the university. And then the guy, as if he didn't see his guilt, started turning the tables on John, saying it was karma, that he didn't have to do that shit in the first place. Time spent with his first love haunted him everywhere. It was like a mark, from which it is impossible to get rid of. And there was only one thing Joseph couldn't figure out when it all went wrong. When he'd opened up, or when there was something in common, or when he trusted his teacher when everything started to fall apart. Then there was another fight with his father, and his last phrase was, "I'm pretending you're not my son, so go away. At least disappear or die," the man said in a cold tone. After a moment's thought, Joseph packed his things and went to the airport. He bought a ticket for the fastest bus to an unknown destination. The guy was no longer able to trust or love someone. He was literally tired of everything. Tears at this point were pouring rivers while he was riding on the bus. He had only one desire, to escape to a place where no one knows him. That's how he ended up on this island, because you can compose wherever your soul desires. So John decided to hide where there are no people. Thought things would get better, at least I tried. But as time went on, I lost the ability to write novels like I used to. John continued his story. He hoped that in time everything would be forgotten, and he would be able to live a normal life again. But as it turned out, it wasn't that easy. And even when he thought that everything is already in the past, in moments when such situations happen, those prickly memories as if nothing had happened come back and eat the guy from the inside. And no matter how much Joseph tried, he was never able to overcome the fears of the past. He only constantly ran from them. There wasn't a time when I was really okay, and constantly I kept going on like that, until I met you, Sandra, Joseph said, turning to the girl. I was honored to have the opportunity to help someone, and watching you, who looked like me, overcome obstacles, I felt a kind of comfort, John explained. But to date, the boy had also realized something else, some difference between them. In fact, Jacob had never imagined that he would ever be able to tell this story so easily to anyone. Even now, though, he was a little afraid that the girl would turn on him when she heard about his past, or think he was pathetic. But really, I've always wanted to be like you, to face my fear without running anywhere. The boy finished his story without taking his eyes off the girl. At that moment, Sandra abruptly pulled the guy to her and hugged him tightly. The girl was touched that the guy opened up to her and told her about his past. People who hurt such a kind man, who didn't abandon a person in a difficult situation. Sandra only felt sorry for the time the guy spent alone. "Why are you crying over me?" These were the questions going around in the guy's head at that moment. Man, who would say it as not his fault? Maybe that's what the guy was waiting for all this time. That same day, Joseph returned home to talk to his brother, and upon his return, his smile resembled a great relief. Also that day, the light in his room stayed on all night as he worked on the finale of his novel, and it was worth it, because his novel, which was released after a 3-year silence, immediately broke into the top charts. Sandra was genuinely happy for the guy, and did not even try to hide her admiration for his success. After all, his new book was like a reward for all the hard times. Gaining popularity, the guy began to be invited to all sorts of interviews, and he in turn called Sandra with him. After all, he was even calmer when he saw her among all this crowd. And just at this moment, to the house of the guy, someone approached, calling Joseph to come out. But as he stepped outside the gates of his house, he saw in front of him the same former classmate who had spread the rumors all over the university. "Do you remember me? We met again. It's such a small world," the guy told him, holding out his business card. John was very surprised that this guy was the interviewer he was expecting. After graduation, as it turned out, the guy went straight to a publishing house. Once inside the house, the guy started putting in phrases that increasingly annoyed Joseph. After all, he thought that the guy lived in a complete mess. But looking around, noticed only cleanliness and the girl standing in front of him. Sandra was just bringing coffee for the interview. "You don't have to worry about me and do the interview in peace." Having said that, the girl hurriedly dressed and left the house. And the interviewer couldn't take his eyes off the girl leaving. But John's rough voice brought him back to reality. They started the interview. "First, I would like to congratulate you on the success of your novel. What prompted you to write this book?" The boy began to ask questions. "I guess I just started wondering about the revenge and love genre," Joseph replied. "I was trying to describe a case where a partner can't hate a person simply because he or she loves." "Well, is that case from your own experience?" This question made John tense up a little, but he only replied dryly and without emotion, "No, an affair remains an affair." And then the interviewer abruptly brought up the topic of the guy's expulsion from uni. He abruptly moved on to the topic of rumors, and as if they were the reason for his leaving the university. "What can you say about it?" the presenter asked. And John was well aware that he was asking these questions on purpose, but what purpose he was specifically pursuing was unknown. "What would you pass on to the students in your group?" There it was, that very question. The guy couldn't stand it any longer. Loudly banging his hand on the table, he interrupted the interviewer's speech and refused to give the interview any further. This shocked the young man. Where is it seen to refuse to be sickled? But the next phrase made John go back to the table. The interviewer began to threaten John, saying he knew the whole truth about his past, so he shouldn't be so rude to him. "It's not like we don't know each other. What have I done to deserve such treatment?" Joseph was already shouting. And the answer to all this was simple human envy. Suddenly, the guy transferred the arrows to Sandra sitting outside the window, asking if she knows about all these rumors. As if sensing his victory, the guy said, "Well, there you go. If we just do an interview, I'll think about it after all." But all he got in response was coffee spilled right in his face. The guy was furious at such insolence and fearlessness on the part of the poet. But Joseph didn't care about that anymore, because now he knew that there was a man who accepted him real. And taking the wet fellow by the collar, he said, "If you don't want to get more, get out of my house." After that sentence, the guy flashed out of the yard. Sandra was a little surprised at such an abrupt and a little even strange ending to the novel interview. Therefore, the guy, deciding not to dwell the young lady's attention on this, offered her a walk. In fact, John was quite surprised by the choice of the girl for a walk, because it was fishing. Sandra explained it by the fact that after they could cook it, although this did not really convince the guy, but still pretended to believe it. Except that at the moment when the guy wanted to offer to treat Sandra, she didn't listen to him at all. She was looking somewhere in the distance. There stood a couple of fishing boats that were diligently bending to get fish from the sea. "John, let's try it," pointed out the girl to those very fishermen. And the lad's attempt at a treat for Sandra was crowned with failure. Suddenly, the line of the fishing rod began to pull hard, thus pulling the girl closer to the board at the edge of the ship. Joseph barely managed to grab her in time to prevent her from repeating the same trick as when they first met, falling into the water. A passing fisherman told the girl to pull the rod as quickly as possible so as not to miss the fish. And lo and behold, a big, beautiful, golden-colored fish appeared from the water. The girl's delight was unbounded. She immediately began to think about what she could cook from it. And the guy was clearly devastated, because he thought he would catch the fish himself and treat Sandra, but in the end he was left empty-handed. But even so, the most important thing to him was her bright smile on her face. When the couple took to eating the fish they had caught, not far from the ship, the silhouette of a dolphin appeared out of the water. The girl couldn't believe her eyes at all. "Apparently, you're very lucky," John said without taking his eyes off Sandra. This bright and sincere smile of the girl made the guy freeze on the spot, and his heart began to beat frantically. Watching all these beauties of the uncharted ocean, the guy could never think of luck in such a way. It was indeed luck since he was able to meet someone like Sandra. The next day, while the guy was quietly washing the dishes, a girl bursts into the kitchen screaming for some kind of trouble. Sandra handed the guy a phone, where there was a letter from the director of a literary publishing house. It was a proposal for publication. The girl was very worried whether it was worth agreeing to it. She was still a little unsure about her manuscripts. Joseph tried his best to encourage the girl and insisted on meeting and possibly signing a contract. But the girl was new to this business, so she didn't really understand which contract would be more favorable for her. And Sandra decided to ask John to go with her to the meeting, referring to the experience of the guy in this business, and she would be calmer at times. In fact, Joseph would have loved to go with her to the meeting, but such large and crowded cities still cause him wild discomfort and panic. Their dialogue was interrupted by the words of the courier that delivered a package for the girl. As it turned out, it was her friends who sent the gift. After all, today was Sandra's birthday, which she hadn't told him about, thus putting the guy in a slightly awkward position. "I'll go with you to the meeting, even though it's no substitute for a birthday present," was the guy's impulsive decision. These words were enough for a bright smile on the girl's face. She was all glowing with happiness. But the guy quickly regretted his proposal, because not even before they had been in the city, he felt sick from the number of people and views on 1 square meter. He looks exhausted. It must be hard for him in front of such a crowd of people, but still he's here for me. Looking at the guy, Sandra admired him silently. Upon entering the office, the girl was greeted by a pleasant manager that kindly led the couple to the main office of the director. "To begin with, I want to thank you for the journey. Let me introduce you to our publishing house." The director began the meeting. The meeting went contentedly well, and the contract will have to be mailed this week. Since there was still a little time before the ferry left, the guy suggested that Sandra go see a movie. The movie was like a typical rom-com. The couple was literally alone in the whole room. With a little sneak peek at the guy, the girl's thoughts ran through her mind. Come to think of it, is this really a date? And indeed, they had become so often together that Sandra hadn't even thought about it until now. Suddenly, their hands accidentally touched, making both of them nervous. At that moment, the girl wanted to know John's true feelings, whether he thought the same, or whether her love was unrequited again. Walking through the park, the couple remembered all the funny moments from the movie. The girl rang with laughter, giving the guy a bright and sincere smile. Soon they took drinks and decided to sit down, take a break on a bench not far from the fountain. "Thank you for coming all this way because of me," Sandra began to speak first. "No, I too wouldn't have dared to go to such a place if it wasn't for you." Still not understanding what the girl was getting at, the guy answered her cheerfully. "And on top of that, you'll be able to find the strength to start all over again. The fact that you saved me already deserves thanks." Sandra continued her speech, bringing her to the main point little by little. And at that moment, looking at the girl, it was as if he realized what she wanted to say. "Are you leaving?" Uncertainly, afraid to hear the truth, asked the boy. "Now that I've gotten my thoughts in order and found a job, it's time to go back. You can't stay on that island forever." Such an answer really did upset the guy a lot. He began to think that he had done something wrong, but the girl anxiously began to reassure him. "No, it's nothing like that. I told you I'm very grateful to you." The only reason the girl had to say goodbye to the guy was because of her crush on him at the moment. The guy was in a stupor, such a kind person who liked him, even after what he was able to tell her. And he himself was only able to get this far because of her. The guy tried to gather his thoughts to answer, but the girl interrupted him, saying, "I don't expect you to answer, and not trying to embarrass you in any way. I just wanted to tell you how I felt before I left. Still, I'm going to stay home a little longer to pack. I don't want you to be embarrassed by me," the girl pronounced, getting up from the bench. "So what do I want from you? What do I want to be for you?" With these thoughts, the guy followed Sandra as they walked to the ferry. The girl was already slowly starting to pack all her things into boxes, and most likely she would have to mail it all. The guy remembers her dropping by his place with only 1 suitcase, and here he had over 6 boxes of stuff in the hallway. In addition, the guy also engaged in cleaning in his room. There was not very much stuff gathered there, only some waste paper and the very broken clock. Thought about what to do with them. After all, it's inconvenient to throw them away. Decided that it would be better to burn them, was the guy's decision about the fate of these things. and he offered Sandra to go along with him. Standing on the seashore, throwing all the things into a barrel, the guy lit a fire on his lighter and brought it to the first photo. He still didn't know if he would be able to completely forget this woman, but transferring his gaze to Sandra standing next to him, he decided, I won't get tangled up in these shards of memory anymore. Afterward, the guy noticed that the girl started rummaging around in her pocket as if she was trying to find something. Sandra pulled out her wedding ring. I didn't know what to do with it, so I kept it to myself, but it's time to get rid of it too. With those words, the girl swung with all her might and threw the ring into the sea. This man left wounds on me, but still he was everything to me, so I kept the ring all this time. But that time has passed, so it's time to move on. After this sentence, the girl's eyes shone in a new way. Did this mean that the couple would have to say goodbye now too? At this moment, Sandra's face filled with horror. She didn't want to accept this. That wasn't funny at all, the girl said, adding, It's not a goodbye. It's just a bye. Is there even a good breakup? Despite a bad or even happy time together, a breakup is still a breakup. The couple still continued to stare at the distant sea horizon as their memories of the past burned behind them. But the girl interrupted this silence by saying, I won't pull away for fear of getting hurt. I want to truly love, even despite the wounds. This way, I will become an adult. As if with relief, on the last breath, said Sandra. And at that moment, gathering all his strength in a fist, the guy, putting his head down, says, Sandra, I'm sorry, but I can't be together with you.